I have just one thing to say to you.
This is the Blood and Black Rum Podcast.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Blood and Black Rum Podcast. I'm Ryan from CultSolution.com, and I'm joined by my co-host Martin.
How's it going?
We're doing well. We're knee deep in Difficult Films Month, which we've been doing for the past couple episodes. We made May into Difficult Films Month. Is May a difficult time of year? Do you think?
For us, yeah, because I think it's usually the month we go to for theme podcast.
Yeah. I don't know. It's I don't think it's a difficult time of year. I think like most people tend to think like January, February is a difficult time of year, especially around here because of the winter and you're just done with it all, done with staying inside. But May, I guess, could be a difficult time because it's transition. It's transition between, you know, springy, crappy winter still and summer. And in that transition, sometimes you get 50-degree days, and then sometimes you're smack dab into a 90-degree day. So, and you know what, too? The other
let's say we've been getting it right now.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's going to be 90 degrees this weekend. So we're definitely right in the midst of that. But another difficult thing about it is that it means that we're only halfway to Halloween.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's very, very difficult for me. It's a reminder. Although, you know what, I start in like the end of August, so we're getting closer. We're creeping up on it. But there was really no rhyme or reason why we picked May as Difficult Films Month. It just happened to fall into time where we had some time to devote to it. And now we're kind of finding like we're getting backed up again. Like Doctor Strange Doctor Strange 2 just released, so we've got to try to get that in at some point, and a couple other things. But you know,
well, listen, it's not our fault that Disney can't stop themselves from releasing 7 films.
Can't stop, won't stop, and they're churning them out even more now. They just announced like that their little Disney Con or whatever they do. They just announced a few more things, like Taika Waititi is going to be directing a new Star Wars movie. And they've got another new series coming out, and they've got some more Marvel shows on the back burner. They just released the trailer for She-Hulk, the TV show. It's like, just take a step back, guys. Just getting tired.
They're making you commit. Like, oh, you like
they really are.
You like Star Wars. You like Marvel. Yep. You like Star Trek.
This is gonna be your life now.
Pick one.
I mean, to be honest with you, like, and I've been trying to follow that stuff too. Like, I've been trying to follow the Disney TV shows for Star Wars because I really enjoyed, you know, like The Mandalorian, and I've been trying to follow all the Marvel shows. And it's like at a certain point, yeah, that becomes your life. You're like, fucking, I gotta catch up on this one. And it's become almost like comic books now too, to the point where you're like, oh, wait a second, like, if I didn't watch the Book of Boba Fett, I'm not going to get Mandalorian Season 3 because it had parts of the Mandalorian in it. And it's like becoming tie-ins upon tie-ins now.
It's to say, no, you're absolutely right. They took the comic book, see, and that's another reason why I haven't really gotten into comic books, because it's just like an endless rabbit hole. Like, you'll be reading a book, and then like, but wait, there's 12 tie-ins that you have to read, and don't you want to know what Booster Gold's doing at this time period, too? Mm-hmm. That there's going to be one thing in a random, you know, series of that like it's going to tie back into the main story you're reading to, you know.
For people with OCD, that's really difficult because you feel like, oh, well, you're like kind of like a chicken with its head cut off, like following, like, oh, now I got to go to that one. Oh, now I'm going to read all that. Oh, now I got to get to this one. And now you're like, you know, you're 7 steps away from where you first started. It's really bad for OCD people, and they capitalize on that. And they're like, we love it. Keep paying that Disney Plus. You don't need any other subscriptions. So, yeah. But we're not here to talk about Disney movies because those aren't very difficult.
I mean, I don't know. Have you seen the Song of the South?
That's true. That one has a difficult history to it. No, we're here.
Have you seen The Mighty Ducks? Emilio Estevez is a drunk like his brother Charlie Sheen. They casted the wrong. Estevez. I mean the wrong Sheen. Sorry.
Either way, interchangeable.
Greatest thing ever to come out of a Yankee game that we went to is listening to the radio broadcast at the stadium and listening to Sterling and Susan Waldman yammer on about who's their favorite Sheen. Just Susan being like, my favorite's Martin.
Well, we are here today to talk about a difficult film called
Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Yeah, the one that you thought it was at first. No, we're here to talk about Donnie Darko.
It's difficult because it's overrated.
No, I'm just kidding. It's in the same time frame.
Didn't Donnie Darko come out like in 2004?
2001.
Oh wow, really? Oh,
yep.
Wow.
Yep. So we're in the same time frame, but no, this one came just a year earlier. We're talking about Requiem for a Dream, which is a Darren Aronofsky film. Who subsequently, I mean, this was really kind of his really big movie. But subsequently, he's had quite a few massive hits. Pretty well known for like the psychological thrillers that he's been pumping out. Big ones for him were Black Swan and Mother, which just came out in 2017. But
The Wrestler, how dare you?
The Wrestler, yeah. No, I'm sorry, I missed that one. I forgot that he's super well known for that one too.
It's a really good movie.
I've never seen it.
It's really good. Depressing.
I'll have to check it out.
You could have put that on difficult films.
Is it difficult because you have to look at Mickey Rourke?
That and it's like just it's like a taxing film.
Yeah. No, we're talking about Requiem for a Dream, which was Darren Aronofsky's like I said, is his breakthrough film. He did have Pi prior to that, and Pi did really well as well. Like people, it was more of like a thing that cult film people picked up on and were like, "Wow, this is a really cool psychological thriller movie." And that really helped him get to the point of releasing Requiem for a Dream. But really, his big movie was Requiem for a Dream. That's the one that's pretty well known. It's still very popular to discuss in movie clicks because it is a movie that has, especially for people who saw it around the time that it released or maybe a little bit later, it really was somewhat traumatizing for people. And it's just really well known for being a film that some people just will not return to. It says it's a really good movie. I'm not going to watch it again. And I get that. I get do you have any movies where you would say it's a good movie, but I'm not going to watch it again? And I don't mean just because it's difficult or anything, but just in general. Movies that you liked, but you're like, I don't need to see that again.
I don't know. Start seeing naming some stuff.
Well, I have one. I would say Revolutionary Road is a movie that I'm happy to have seen. Eventually I did enjoy it, but I would never watch it again. I thought it was, it's one of those movies where when I was watching it, I was like, this movie, I don't like this movie. And then I got to the end of the movie and I was like, that was a pretty good movie as a whole, but I don't want to return to it ever again. So that's one, and because it's very dramatic, is very tedious at times, but then it ended up having a really good storyline to it, and it ended on a pretty good note. So that's one that I would say that I would not watch again, but I enjoyed.
I don't know. I really have to sit and think on that because I mean, when it comes to media, we both kind of have two different perspectives. You just want to chew through it all. I like to revisit things.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Yeah, we do have different perspectives.
So I mean, I can't honestly think of a film that I enjoyed that I wouldn't think about eventually revisiting. Because eventually get the itch to sit down and.
Yeah, I mean, of course we know some that you would never revisit just because they were bad, but it's a uniqueness to have a movie that you enjoyed but just not want to come back to.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what Requiem for a Dream has done to some people. So that's why I want to do it. And luckily I had the 4K as well, the 4K UHD that I had been meaning to watch. So this was a perfect time to do that. And you had never seen Requiem for a Dream before, is that right?
No.
Okay, yeah, because you had originally thought you had seen it, but you were thinking of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which is a very different movie, completely different movie in all respects. But yeah, actually, I had never seen Requiem for a Dream either. I picked it specifically because I knew that it was often considered a difficult movie, and I wanted to find out why. And it just seemed like a perfect time to go over that.
And don't lie to our listeners. We did not watch this on 4K UHD. We had Xbox, Microsoft's HD DVD. We have that copy of Requiem for a Dream.
You know what, though? Requiem for a Dream is an interesting movie in that I don't know that you really do need to watch it in 4K UHD because it's shot in a lot of ways and meant to be somewhat blurry and like almost like smeared Vaseline lens caps and stuff like that, to the point where you're sort of questioning, like, is it worth it for me to like watch it in 4K? You know, is that taking away from some of the intention because I'm seeing things in like absolute pristine detail that I really don't need to be? So it's an interesting movie like that. And there's some movies that do have that sort of odd juxtaposition between like how gritty the film is supposed to be and then like you're being presented with like absolute, like, here's every single pixel you'll ever need to see. It is a weird like caveat of now that we're continually trying to up the ante of picture quality. Certain things just don't translate well to having immaculate picture quality. You know, even when Grindhouse movies released to drive in theaters, you know, it wasn't astounding quality and it wasn't meant to be. It was like a cheap movie that you took your date to and, you know, turned down the lights and didn't watch half the movie. All right, so before we get into Requiem for a Dream in total, let's talk about the beer that we have on the show today. We'll preface that beer by saying we were pretty excited to try this beer.
I'm gonna go grab the second can right now.
Okay. All right. Give you a second, and I'll do the lead in for this beer. We had been excited for this beer because it was it's in a line of beers that we've done on the show before. They've been releasing this Neon line of beers for quite some time, and the newest one in the Neon series that Ommegang Brewing Company has released was going to be a hazy IPA, and it was going to be a crossover with Thin Man Brewing, which is a brewery out of the Buffalo area, and it was going to cross over with their very, very popular Minky Boodle, which is a raspberry sour that they make. Probably one of the highest rated sours that I can think of. It's just very well regarded in the sour line. So this was a cross between the Minky Boodle from Thin Man and Ommegang's Hazy series called Neon Boodles. So, of course,
by the way, what a great name. The Minky Boodle.
The Minky Boodle. Yeah, it's just, it makes sense. It's a crossover. And so Ommegang and Thin Man Brewing worked together to create this. And it is ultimately a tropical hazy IPA with raspberry to get the both sour and IPA flavors into one beer. So, I'll let you go first. What did you think about the Neon Boodles?
The Neon Boodles. Sounds so delightful. Boodles. Well, I had big expectations for this beer. One, because we're big Ommegang fans here. Two, the offerings we've had from Thin Man, we've liked quite a bit. Based out of Buffalo. Had a couple other stuff. But yeah, so like the idea of combining, this kind of the idea of the Minky Boodle, raspberry sour with an IPA from Ommegang is an enticing idea. We both love raspberry. We're old men. It's one of our favorite, fruits. Nice little raspberry. So it was interesting, kind of waited with bated breath to get this one, to finally do it. And disappointment is all I have. Raspberry and NEIPA don't really kind of pair well, at least with this offering from them. To say it's an IPA is kind of, like I was saying to Ryan before we started, it's like probably technically an IPA, but you don't get any IPA-ness. You don't really taste any of the 4 hops in here. They're all buried in the raspberry, which the raspberry does start off at first, like it does have like a nice tartness to it, and it's good. And as Ryan will say, in a little bit more detail when he talks about it, you get an incredibly like metallic, yeasty, like Belgian yeasty, like taste on the back end, which when you're drinking like a normal Ommegang, it's fine and dandy, and goes well with what those beers usually offer. The coriander, the orange, the spices. It does not pair well here, and it's not something you'd expect in a NEIPA. I commend them for the effort and the idea because it's interesting, it's new. I can't really think of off the top of my head any raspberry IPAs that I've had, but I wish it was. Obviously, I wish it was better, more well executed. It's a fine beer, but I would not go out of my way to get this again. It's pretty disappointing. You do get a nice raspberry taste to it, but it's incredibly prominent. It kind of overwhelms everything and then just kind of bleeds into like a yeasty, tinny can taste at the back end. So that's my thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely was disappointed as well. When I first cracked into this, I was excited because I thought that it was gonna have some raspberry to it, pair well with like sort of like the white, sort of wit elements that Ommegang sometimes has, and then have the IPA-ness to it as well because we've had a number of the other, almost every single Neon beers in the series, and pretty much every one of them has been a hit for me. All of their hazy IPAs have been really good. The experiments with other brewers have been really good. We've covered a lot of them on the show too, and all of them have really hit for me. So this one, to have this, it was very, very disappointing to see that this one didn't really hit that well. And to be fair too, I like Minky Boodle a lot from Thin Man. And I've had some good beers from Thin Man as well. And so the two together should have been a hit. But for me, whatever is going on in this beer is just not working very well. I think the overwhelming amount of raspberry notes to this sort of does not complement the hazy IPA elements of at least the hop choosings that they've picked here for this.
Suffocates it.
Yeah, it's just a weird pairing overall where we get a very mild amount of hop taste to it, but then I think what's ending up happening is that the raspberry overpowering is giving it a very weird aftertaste that doesn't particularly go well together, and it's at odds with what it's trying to do. And then the other thing that it gets to is just a very overwhelming yeast flavor at the end that I don't think is probably the intended taste for this, because it's Ommegang uses quite a bit of Belgian yeast in their beers, so that's kind of a given. And then a hazy IPA uses yeast to make it very hazy and unfiltered, but it just does not go well together. And I feel like the beer is constantly fighting with itself as to what flavor you're really supposed to be getting out of it. So for me, it's really kind of a disappointment. I'm not saying that it's not drinkable. It's definitely drinkable, and I don't mind it. It's not terrible where I gotta pour this out, but it's definitely a disappointment considering how good the Neon series has been so far, and the two brewers that are making this beer. I really think that they They could have had a stronger offering, and I think they need to go back to the recipe a little bit and try to tweak like how much raspberry is in it, because I think the raspberry really is the thing that's like going overboard here. The tartness is just like out of control, and I think that's like throwing off the balance of the other flavors. I think your mileage may vary though. I don't know.
I mean, I just kind of think, I mean, it's an interesting try. I'd like to see kind of other brewers try this, but at this moment, I think it's kind of something that isn't meant to go together.
Right.
I don't think the pairing,
like you were saying too,
well.
the idea of tropical raspberry is not really a thing. When
it's not tropical.
Right. You
it's
think
not
about
a tropical fruit.
Tropical fruits. Raspberry doesn't really come to mind.
It's forest. It's like, northern forest.
It's
like,
the Foragers IPA, Forager Raspberry IPA. It's like we combine mushrooms and raspberry.
Like raspberry would work well with like a pilsner or a lager or Kolsch.
And as it has, or a raspberry wheat or something like that,
But I mean, so again, like I'd be interested to see like if somebody else can maybe make it work. But I do think it is kind of like a flawed concept. Because again, like I love blackberries and I love IPAs. Would a blackberry IPA probably work that well? Probably not, because the pairings on like what they have to offer, like flavor wise, is so. It's such a juxtaposition of like what they are.
But it is interesting too, like if you think about like raspberry lemon goes really well together, and sometimes certain hops can have like more of a lemony zest to them. So I'm just wondering if the pairings of the hops that were picked for this one were just not as ideal as some of the other ones that they had, or maybe there's just too many in here that are really cluttering up the taste.
Well, they do have 4 hops: Citra, Mosaic, Amarillo.
Right. So maybe like just
Mandarina,
sticking
Bavaria.
to like a Citra or something would have been maybe a little bit easier to balance than trying to combine all those hops, and then you kind of lose the flavor profile a little bit. So I would be interested.
I would say they have the gall on their like rating scale of like haze, hop aroma, and bitterness. The bitterness is like at 40%. There's no bitterness really there at all.
I mean, the haze level, that's certainly accurate because there's so much yeast in it that I wouldn't doubt the haze level. And I actually poured it out, and it does have a nice unfiltered hazy quality to it, and it does have a pink tinge to it from the raspberries. Not as pink as I was expecting, though, because if you've ever poured out the Minky Boodle, super pink. This one, not so much. I was expecting it to be a little bit like more of a reddish hue than it has.
Oh, be still my fucking beating heart. Thin Man, apparently they have 3 different brew pubs that we're going to have to go to, but on special today is pineapple teriyaki wings and a shrimp quesadilla.
I'm not a fan of the sweetness, though.
They have an appetizer,
On a wing.
bacon nubs, which is smoky and crisp fried pork, tossed in a bourbon maple glaze and honey sriracha.
That sounds good.
It just sounds delightful.
Check out Thin Man Brewing. It's in Buffalo. I think they have are all those 3 of those somewhere like around the Buffalo vicinity.
Oh, look, said they just have it just says like like on the street that they're on, so I imagine they're all in Buffalo.
Yeah, somewhere around Buffalo. Thin Man Brewing is really centered around Buffalo, and then Ommegang is in Cooperstown, New York. Stop there. Stop at the Baseball Hall of Fame. Stop at Cooperstown Brewing and Distilling as well.
We need to do an episode from the Hall of Fame.
I know, just on location.
It's the happiest place in all of America.
It would be fun to like kind of go to a brewery and just do an on location. I don't know how well it would work out, but it would be fun.
With our shit set up, yeah.
We've also had
you should be telling people, we're like, hey, pay for like the whatever the fuck it's called.
Donate so that we can get the soundboard and stuff.
Yeah.
We want to get a soundboard so we can do call-ins.
Well, I was gonna say, don't be saying like for beer. We can afford the beer. We need the tech. That's what we need. But
A low tech setup.
No.
All right.
Ooh, truffle fries, hand cut with truffle oil, parmesan, and parsley. That just sounds amazing.
All right, let's move on to...
What's a buffalo wombat?
Oh, my God. You're just going to go through the menu?
Well, it says buffalo wombat hoagie. Spicy fried trial by wombat, battered cauliflower bites, stuffed into a hoagie roll with hot sauce, blue cheese dressing, lettuce, and tomato. You know what? That's something we should throw to the audience. What do you call like a nice hot sandwich? Is it a hoagie? Is it a grinder? Submarine? What do you call it?
Opening the phone lines now.
If you call it a hoagie, you're a fucking idiot.
Grinder's the only exception. Don't call it... Yeah, it's a grinder, but... Grinder.
I want to know how that came about. I want to know the etymology of that, because...
probably something to do with the meat grinder, I'm going to guess.
I know, but why hot?
The only way to make it palatable was to take all the shavings from the meat grinder and stick it in a hot sub. That's my guess. All right. After pondering the etymologies of grinder, let's move on to Requiem for a Dream.
Starring Jim Carrey.
Yes. No, actually, you were a little bit offended because you were looking at the cast for this movie, and it has Jared Leto, it has Damon Wayans, and right there you were like ready to write this off, right?
I was. First off, you can't even get the right fucking Wayans, bro.
Sorry, Marlon Wayans. Sorry.
Wow, you just
Damon. I was hoping it was Damon, actually.
Can't even get it right. You fucked that up.
I was hoping it was Damon. Or Keenan.
Sean Wayans? Yeah.
Sure.
It's Steve Harvey. But no, I wasn't upset with the casting. I mean, well, Jared Leto, because Jared Leto's a fucking idiot, but...
That was what stuck out to you first. No, but so Requiem for a Dream, it follows 4 characters really. It follows Jared Leto's character Harry, and his trials as a drug dealer, and also a user, along with his partner Tyrone, who is played by Marlon Wayans.
Thank you.
Got it right. And then it also follows Harry's girlfriend, Marion, who is also a user and is also kind of swept up in this whole drug dealing, but she's kind of like on the sideline. So she's with Harry, but she's not really into the drug dealing business, but they're all kind of together trying to make their way through, like, figuring out how to make this work to get enough money to kind of get out of the business. And then there's Harry's mother, Sarah, who gets a random call from like a telemarketing scam that says she's going to be on TV, and to get ready for being on TV, she's going to get some information in the mail, and she makes it her goal to lose enough weight to get into this old dress that she has that means a lot to her, so that she can be on TV and look fabulous and kind of look like her old self. And so the film really follows those 4 people throughout their trials and tribulations, and it kind of takes place over the course of a year, which is segmented throughout the film by a very strong sound effect of like something falling, like bars falling, as the title card gives you the different seasons. So that's ultimately the gist of Requiem for a Dream. As it follows these characters, things kind of start out like really, kind of peachy. Like, that's the dream part of it. The dream is that we're gonna succeed. We're gonna meet our goals. We're gonna do this thing that we wanted to do for so long, and everything's gonna be good, right? So, like,
no.
No, and I guess if you look at the title, like, you can pretty much immediately see that the film is not going to be like the fun, happy-go-lucky movie that it's originally is made out to be at the beginning of the movie. You know, and I would say that the beginning of the movie is obviously not making light of drug use, but it's also not super serious. Like I feel like Darren Aronofsky structures it in a way that makes the beginning of the movie seem like everything's going to be okay. Like, you know, we have a plan. We're going to get, you know, we're going to sell a whole bunch of drugs and then everything's going to be okay. We're going to make a lot of money.
I mean, it's like wistful from the perspective of these people, but I think if, as you know, viewers and, you know, being voyeurs on this journey, it's not like, oh yeah, they're gonna sell enough ancient, they're gonna be okay.
Yeah, I mean, I like at the beginning of the movie, you know, though it kind of has like a more lighthearted tone to it, where like the music's a little bit more lighthearted, the different cuts, because this movie has like a lot of cuts. It's almost structured like a music video at times. Those elements kind of give it almost like a cartoony nature at times. Like all of the cuts of them doing drugs, doing heroin, and then it cuts away to like various different symbolic imagery of like, you know, dropping the drugs onto a tray and melting it down and stuff like that. It kind of all gives it sort of like a cartoony element to it, especially because the sound effects used. The sound design is really important to this movie, and the sound effects when they are doing drugs is really like cartoonish. The one thing that I really think is funny is when Sarah, Ellen Burstyn, she's popping pills because she gets hooked on pills to try to lose weight. She goes to a doctor who basically says, yeah, we can lose 20 pounds in 50 days, no problem. Here, let me give you these pills. And he just basically gives her a combination of like speed and then downers. So speed for when you're awake, and then here's a downer for when you got to go to sleep. You're good to go. So like 3 pills throughout the day.
4.
And
no, wait, no. Hold on. I think it's 5 actually. Morning, afternoon, evening, dinner. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he gives her like 3 different types of pills, because there's one that's like going to be your upper, the one that's going to really get her moving throughout the day, getting, you know, basically keeping her on her feet and, you know, really wasting away. One to keep her appetite suppressed, and then one to then ultimately put her to bed at night, because it basically is like a Ambien, you know, because like after being on all day on uppers, you got to come down. So he gives her the Ambien to like put her out in like 20 minutes. But, you know, when she's taking her pills, you know, you hear like this little like, you know, like cartoony pops when she's popping them in her mouth. It's like, oh, it looks so fun to just be popping these pills all the time. Not only that, but she's constantly watching this self-help video from Tappy Tibbins, played by one of our favorites, Christopher McDonald, who's basically a self-help guru. He's kind of like Patrick Swayze from Donnie Darko.
Donnie Darko.
Yeah, it's very, very reminiscent of that as well. And actually, Donnie Darko was in 2001, but a similar idea of using.
Well, I was saying the same thing. Like Jared Leto, and this is, as you said, I said he's just, you know, ripping Gyllenhaal, but, you know, obviously, you know, Jake and Donnie Darko is, you know, after this, but still, you know, it comes across. But yeah, no. Christopher McDonald is kind of a poor man's Patrick Swayze, even though I think he is better than Patrick Swayze, you know, and he just, you know, oozes bastard every time he's on the screen.
Yeah, I mean, I think he does a really good job just in the moments that we get from him, that we see on the videos, because Tappy Tibbins is meant to be like the showcase of like, here's how you can do everything that you ever wanted to do. Because Requiem for a Dream, when it boils down to it, is not so much about, I mean, it's a lot about drug use and abuse, but it's a lot also about how, you know, the goal of trying to ultimately change your life, can sometimes lead you down a place that you never expected, that ultimately is a lot further away than where you thought you were going to get. Because, you know, Sarah's character specifically, her goal is really just to lose weight, right? And to get into that red dress, because she's misled into thinking she's going to be on TV. And she's not a drug user. She doesn't have any experience using drugs. and she goes to a doctor who she thinks is reputable, and she gets prescribed all these drugs that are ultimately addictive, and she doesn't even realize that she's going down this rabbit hole because she's attempting to get to a dream that is really like unrealistic, to lose all this weight for no reason, just to fit into an old dress. And the film really tackles the idea of what happens when you have these dreams that are sometimes either unattainable or, not manageable, and how you can slip into things like drug abuse because of that.
I'll agree and disagree with some of that. I don't think the film's necessarily about drug use. It's more the heroin use from 3 of our 4 protagonists is more of a overview of addiction itself. Because again, when most people think addicts, they think strung out junkies, and they look at them and say like, oh, what fucking horrible choices you've made in your life. Why would you ever do such a thing? And we get to see that through Ty and Harry and through Marion. But we get Sarah, Harry's mother, to be the kind of juxtaposition to that, to which the addiction that she suffers from, one, is not really of her own fault. It is in a sense that like she has like as you were talking about, unrealistic desires and an unrealistic dream to like try to lose weight in a certain amount of time. And I don't know if the film, because again, now we're 20 years out from this, plus 20 years out from this film. But looking at it in today's, world of, with the opioid crisis, with a lot of people becoming addicted to opioids because of terrible mismanagement and prescriptions from doctors, pharmacists, etc., her addiction is really relatable, and how like just flip it and easy it was for her to become addicted because of misguided prescription and the things that she faces. So, and I think you really get to see that when you get to see her go to the doctor saying she wants to lose weight, and you're like, you're not really that overweight, and she's like, well, I could lose 50 pounds, and the doctor's just like, yeah, here you go, here's a fucking script.
He comes in for like literally a minute,
and he's never looks at her or anything. He's always just looking down at the clipboard, like, yeah, we got something for you. Very flippant, very nonchalant, and the struggles that she goes through, I think it's not. I think that works well to also address like that kind of addiction. But I think also too, her addiction didn't start from drug use. It started from unrealistic expectations and the addiction, like of trying to like, I'm going to lose weight, and struggling with that, and how addiction exists in millions of different forms for people. So for some people it's heroin, for some people it's alcohol, for some people it's marijuana, etc. We all have our vices, things that keep us kind of clouded in mind.
And I think the film gives us an interest. I think everybody all the characters are really well characterized, and they all have a really good elements to them, especially like with Harry, like you were saying, how do people get into this situation? Well, the film shows you how. There's really nowhere else for them to go. What else are they doing? So they turn to what they can to make it work. But I think, like you said, the one that is relatable, the most relatable for general people, is Sarah, because she falls into this pattern, and there's a couple things in her life that gets her to this place. The one is obviously watching Tappy Tibbins, who says he has a perfect life because this is what he did. He cut out some sugars. He stopped eating, he stopped eating cereal. So he has a perfect life now.
He stopped eating raw meat.
Yep, and raw meat, because apparently he was blasting through raw meat like crazy. He was eating it right off the T-bone, raw.
He ran out and took down a cow himself.
You know what? I can see Christopher McDonald doing that. The only thing is that I can see him doing that with the mustache. But in this movie, he doesn't have the mustache, so that's why. That's why he's no longer a meat addict. But
which fun fact to tie it all back to Thin Man in Buffalo, Christopher McDonald, big Buffalo Bills fan.
I think you get that in every single time we cover it, which is not often, but we've had 2 movies now with Christopher McDonald, and I think you've gotten that in both times. So,
because you know what, somebody has to say it. We're riding high.
Somebody must know. Christopher McDonald's a big Buffalo fan. You know what?
We got him, like Summer Sanders and like Brian Dunkelberg from like.
I'm curious if Jennifer Connelly is too, because she has roots in the Catskills.
But that's not like Bills.
No, I know. I'm just saying.
She's from fucking Cairo. For God's
she's
sakes.
she's still from the surrounding area. I'm curious if she's a Buffalo Bills fan too.
Probably not. Her eyebrows probably say Jets.
Wow. She just gives you a look and says, "No, I'm with the Jets." No, but I think, like I was saying, the one that we can relate to most is Sarah. And Ellen Burstyn gives a really great speech to Harry when Harry goes back to visit her after she's gotten on pills. And it's actually a really good moment because Jared Leto, has that accent in this movie, and he's like, "Ma, what are you doing? What are you doing? You running around here?" And it's just a great moment overall as they're trading barbs, and he's, basically catching on to the fact that she's on speed. But Ellen Burstyn gives that really good speech about how she really has nothing left. Like, she doesn't have anything to look forward to. Her kid's moved out. Husband's dead. She doesn't have anybody to care for. She's there in an apartment alone, literally every single day. Every single day is exactly the same. And this thing out of the blue, this TV show that she's going to potentially be on, which is a scam, is...
Well, do we know it's a scam?
And we don't know it's a scam, but it's just a really random thing, and it basically takes over her life. We don't really know that it's a scam.
I don't think it's a scam because, I mean, what a weird fucking scam that... Hey, you're going to be on The Price is Right!
It's Tappy Tibbins.
Woo!
Tappy Tibbins is PR, is contacting people and just making them think they're going to be on Tappy Tibbins' show.
What they never said was Tappy
No, I know.
Tibbins.
I'm just kidding.
The only reason you would think that is because we see the infomercial on 24/7, like it's Ron Popelis, set it and forget it.
Yeah, we don't know that it's a scam, I guess, but overall, like over time, as we've seen, and it's like almost a year throughout Requiem for a Dream, she doesn't really get anything else from the show, and her speech is like saying, you know what? What's the harm in me being obsessed with this TV show and having an obsession, because it gets me up in the morning. It gets me feeling like I have something to work towards. And that, I think, is really a prominent thing about Requiem for a Dream that like regular people can relate to, that at a certain point you're going to reach a time in your life where you might not feel like you have a purpose. You're just doing stuff to do stuff and going on, and it's depressing, but you may not really have something that keeps you going, and you have to find that thing that keeps you going. And for her, it's fitting into this red dress that ultimately becomes an obsession that leads her into drug use, really unknowingly. And I think hers is one of the more depressing storylines in Requiem for a Dream, because it ultimately leads her to really no help whatsoever. And the film kind of goes into the fact that, like, there's really not much help for people who are drug abusers, because ultimately people just really look at you like you're crazy. There's a really great scene when she first goes into the hospital, and the one guy in the emergency department just, like, shines a light in both of her eyes and, like, nope, not an emergency. Send her on down to psych. Just no. Just looking at she's gonna have a seizure or not.
I think literally yes, it's that, but also too, I think it's a metaphor for obsession itself. So you could like her drug abuse or misuse, I should say, it's not a fault of her own, and it's actually happening in the story, and it's again relating like. how people were kind of thinking of like opioid addiction in 2000. It's 10 years old, can't remember. But now with it being the issue that it is, and knowing people who have gone through this, family members, etc., it hits differently. But I think here also too, I think you could use the addiction that she suffers through, the pills that she gets. You can use that as like a metaphor, like for, as you said, like her obsession to fit into the red dress, and have those pills kind of act as a, metaphorically for her obsession, her addiction. But you're right, we do get to see kind of the callousness of how people kind of think and treat people with substance abuse problems, because you get to see, Jared Leto's arm basically fucking turning venom, and the doctor, instead of trying to help him, was like, we gotta send him to prison because he's got heroin on him.
Yeah, you notice
that was literally right up on the first thing. Like, I could help this guy whose fucking arms, getting gangrene and rotten, but I gotta make sure, the South Carolina police make sure he gets sent to fucking county so he can crack some,
rocks in the hot sun.
On the highway.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's a great moment, because he just walks in. Obviously knows, this is a drug addict. Look at his arm. Yeah, he's fucking got a symbiote on him, and his arm's literally like falling off. Let me just take up all this morphine, and I'll be right back. Let me go get the police. And yeah, and also, did you notice too that that's Dylan Baker, who's also in Trick or Treat, that you done?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
And Sam Raimi Spider-Man's 2 and 3.
Mr. Wilson. Yep.
I had to look through his like filmography, but like he looks so fucking familiar.
Yeah, he gets like a really, really small part in there, just playing the doctor, but he's actually credited as Southern Doctor.
I know, it's
poor guy, but yeah, it's an early role for him. So, yeah, but it's a crazy scene, and like that's really where we haven't really talked about Harry and his friends, but Harry and Tyrone and Marion, they kind of have a different trajectory. They have like the general addict trajectory of, they're users, they're heroin users. They ultimately mean to do well, and they're trying to get out of this lifestyle. The goal is to sell enough heroin to get out of the lifestyle, to make enough money where they can go do something else and not have to worry about it. But of course, we as viewers kind of know that that's not going to be the case. They don't really see themselves as addicts and users. And actually, Marion, Jennifer Connelly's character, even later on in the film when she's doing, basically prostitution for drugs, she still says that she's not really, like she's not a user. She's just like a casual, like I just like to have heroin sometimes.
Keith David says, yeah, sure you do.
Yeah, well, Keith David is like, I just pulled out my Big Tim for you, and so
I didn't pull it out just to get some air.
You know what, Keith David, he really blew me away in this part, because I this is not the Keith David I know. He's not a drug dealer with a passion for pussy. He's the guy from The Thing or from They Live, and he's a better man than that.
Or Saints Row 3. He was. Oh no, I lied. He's in Saints Row.
He's got a great voice, so it doesn't surprise me that he does voiceover work for that stuff.
A global force for good. He reprised his role as Spawn in the Mortal Kombat game when they had him.
I didn't know he was Spawn in that.
Well, he played Spawn.
Oh yeah, yep.
But more importantly, he was Admiral David Anderson in Mass Effect.
Oh. Yeah. Oh yeah. That does ring a bell. Yeah,
I think in Saints Row 3 he had DLC where they added Roddy Piper and they reenacted as like characters you could call for help, and they reenacted They Live, and after he gets done fighting Roddy, they're like, where did he go? And he goes, Roddy goes wherever he needs to go.
Yeah, but even for his small role in this, Keith David is actually a really important part of this movie because there's a moment where Requiem for a Dream kind of like spirals down into the ultimate
Hell.
dark and depressing movie that it is, where you sense that okay, we've kind of like. No, I'm not saying like it's something like out of the director's hands. It was intentional, but we've spiraled out of control, like with the characters. That there's a point of no return, and that point of no return happens when like Tyrone is picked up from the police, where there's a really kind of out of nowhere scene where he's just like with his drug dealer, and all of a sudden somebody shoots him in the face, and he's running away and gets caught by the cops.
Didn't you like the fact that the guy that's like the boss? What a progressive film!
Yeah,
that's like the boss is deaf. He's got to do sign language.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I thought it definitely was progressive. But yeah, that moment is kind of where we start spiraling out of control, because that's where everything goes wrong for Tyrone. They lose all their money. They don't have a dealer anymore, and there's no one to facilitate their use either. So that's when Jennifer Connelly's character, Marion, kind of, goes from being like the lovable girlfriend of Harry to someone who's constantly pestering him. Like, did you get the stuff? Did you get the stuff? And it causes them to have to do more and more risky things. And we start to see like that spiral of like, we've lost control. And at a certain point, they start to do anything that they can to get back into the, into their dream. It's just a pretty, it's a pretty thrilling series of events that occur, which leads us up to the conclusion where we are seeing all four of these characters in their own personal hells of, first Harry is getting his arm cut off, amputated, because it's just so bad. The infection is so bad that he actually can't keep his arm. You have Tyrone, working himself to death in like a prison camp while trying to go through detox. You have Marion, who's, like we said, has kind of like resulted to prostitution. To
what do you mean she's through hell? She's through heaven, ass to ass.
Yeah, absolutely, ass to ass. Of course.
And you know what? God bless this film, because they made sure to show that they lubed up that dildo.
That's only right. I mean, right? I mean, if you're gonna have, a business work group that is, chanting and betting.
Well, I don't know why they're like sitting there waving money around, like who, like, is it tug of war?
Yeah, it's a...
like clench your asshole. See who's gonna,
This is why women don't like men. because it's the equivalent of a fucking Mexican cockfight in there. Just chanting on two women to have an ass-to-ass tug-of-war with a lubed-up gigantic dildo.
Double-headed,
Yeah.
Double.
And to be fair, too, we should say we watched the quote-unquote director's cut, which is really the theatrical cut. But apparently this movie also got released with an R-rated like cut version, which doesn't have like the dildo stuff. And that got released to like Blockbuster on home video, where Blockbuster was like, we can't be, we have a back room, but we can't be.
I know it got like an NC-17 rating, which I think by today's terms it'd be tame. I think even like the two sex scenes that you get to see are really tame, especially for today. It might have been the ass to ass that put over the.
I think it's it's like the tame. I think it's tame but taboo, is what it comes down to. The taboo-ness of it, of like actually having anal sex on a movie, because if you think about it, like, sure,
it's not anal sex if it's a dildo.
like I guess, yeah, like from today's standards, I think that would fly. But I think like the tabooness of it, and also just the overall context of it being like sort of a woman who's, you know, I guess she is making the choice to do it, but it's also not really a choice. The context itself is really, you know, what kind of makes it a lot more intense. And then not only that, but it's, you know, it's kind of all of these four things happening at the same time, which is just like a clusterfuck of bad things occurring all at once, which I think adds to the intenseness of that ending. That I think really makes what this movie considered to be a difficult film. And it's a difficult film because it ultimately has no real good outcome to it. And I think at a certain point, as you're watching the Requiem for a Dream and you get to that spiral, you know, as the viewer, there's no good outcome that's going to happen from this. Like, these characters are not bound to make it out of this situation okay. There's going to be, you know, so there's like that ultimate doom and gloom that's kind of like that's a pall that's cast over Requiem for a Dream, probably from the last half of the movie, really. Maybe from the second and third act on, you just have that pall of just like, I know that bad things are going to happen. So I think it's a context in general of knowing that. What do you think is the most effective story from the four of these characters?
Well, I think, for the most part, I think it'd be more two characters, because I think Sarah, Harry's mother, is one side of the coin, and I think a lot of what happens between Harry, Marion, and Tyrone are incredibly tied together, so it's two separate sides.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're both really effective, because, again, you get from Marion, Tyrone, and Harry, you know, kind of a look at, you know, these are junkies, this is what their life's like, and then, like, whether or not you decide to kind of sympathize with their plight is up to you, depending on how, you know, you view addiction, and then seeing the kind of counterpoint through what, you know, Sarah goes through is really intriguing to have that, you know, because it kind of ties it back to, like, well, you know, to a lot of people who view, you know, addiction as usually, you know, the person who's addicted's fault, and then kind of seeing that counterpoint through Sarah. I think they both work really well in what they're trying to do.
Yeah,
I didn't really have like a favorite overall on, like, you know, which narrative I liked the best. I think they worked.
Yeah,
in concert.
I would agree with that. I think like every one of them like, this is a film that's you know, it has four major characters, and all four of them are characterized in a really great way where it doesn't really require the audience to get like an in-depth backstory about them. It doesn't really give us any you know, like specific characterization. It's all shown through the things that they do throughout the movie, and that comes out really well into the development of the characters and how we feel about them, because the film really gives us a great relationship between Harry and Marion. Obviously, there are some issues within that, you know, because they're both drug addicts, and that can cause some concern. But for overall, they have a really good relationship, and it shows how it falls apart. And then they have, you know, the relationship between Harry and Tyrone, who are both working really well together. They're good partners. And ultimately, because Harry has, you know, that infection in his arm from shooting up, you know, that falls apart as well. And Tyrone goes to jail because of it. And then you have Sarah, who, you know, has a interesting relationship with her son, and, you know, really has her own development overall as this film shows us what she wants and her needs and her dreams. You have that fall apart as well. And I think it really does a really good job of showing them at a good point in their lives and then showing how that dissolves over time because of the drug use. So I think you're right. I mean, I think every one of them has done really well. I was really interested in Sarah, and then I think also Marion, because Marion kind of has the least amount of development as a character. She's always kind of the side piece to Harry. Like, it's always Harry and Marion. But later on in the movie, it kind of captures how she feels about things. And there's that really harrowing scene where she knows that she has to go and sleep with this guy because she needs money for their last like heroin score, which is, you know, really done well.
Which is apparently her psychiatrist.
Oh, is that what it's meant to be, really?
That's Arnold's apparently her psychiatrist.
Yeah, I mean, it kind
of
goes into that a little bit. I don't know that it was super clear.
I never heard it, but on the Wikipedia it says psychiatrist, which I was kind of blown away.
I mean, he kind of talks about that in certain ways too, right? Like, because he kind of like says like, oh, you know, what have you been up to? He kind of goes into like a psychiatry sort of thing. But yeah, that's
because the perfect time to have a psychiatrist meeting is at a fucking steakhouse while you're sitting there ravenously eating.
Do you like that?
Steak.
That's faster than I normally eat steak. And
no,
I normally eat steak.
No, that guy's like not even enjoying what he's eating. He's just fucking plowing right through it, like sitting there like you know, double Uncle Rico speed.
Well, doesn't that get you in the mood though?
No,
isn't that like?
No, it's obscene. It's like stop.
Jennifer Connelly, after she has sex and has that, you know, that cheating moment for the money, doing it for the money, she comes out, runs out, and there's like this film kind of employs like the chest cam, the one that shows it like from the bottom view of your face, which has like, I think I don't know if it's the first one to do it, but Aronofsky is really one of the primary people to do that sort of like, you know, movement in camera. And then she comes out after that and vomits, and I think it's probably just because she's still disgusted from the steak feast that Arnold.
It's not the sex; it's just him fucking sitting there,
pounding away at steak and not enjoying it. There's no, you know, he's not putting condiments on it or anything. He's just
sitting
gnawing away. He might as well be
bottle of Perrier and.
He might as well be a caveman just gnawing on a bone.
That is a well shot. Watching her after that torrid affair and having that shaky cam, voyeuristic view of her going out and watching her, you can tell by the way the camera work is, and obviously Jennifer Connelly's acting, like how nauseous she is, and then watching like what actually unfolds. It's really well done.
What do you think about the stylism of Requiem for a Dream?
I like it a lot. I think the editing is the editing and the cinematography overall is what makes the film special. I think, especially because again, the first 45 minutes of this film are just repetition, watching the repetition of these people and seeing their habits play out, and then seeing them play out in the dramatized way of how we get when they shoot up heroin, watching them, the bubbles, the cooking, the needle, and it's all that aesthetic is what makes this film. I really like it a lot. I think this is an incredibly well shot film, and if anything, it's an incredibly well edited film with a snappiness, a direction, and an idea on how to move it forward in a way that, as even somebody who likes film like that, goddamn, to have that, this is what we need to do, this repetition and, showing that, all these, crash cuts of, this is what's happening, this is what's happening, this is what's happening. I think it works really well. The aesthetic, I think, to me, is probably one of the most enjoyable things about this film, because I think without it, I don't think it wouldn't be an enjoyable film, but I think the aesthetic is like 60% of why you would come and watch this film.
Yeah, I mean, I think the stylism really is what makes Requiem for a Dream. Like, this could be any other movie about drug use, but because of the stylization, it really gets you into the film. It uses a lot of different techniques, sound design, the personal POVs. A lot of the times, it has a very specific way of shooting conversations too that are really like up close and personal. A lot of the cinematography too is really great, like the spiral out, metaphorically, symbolically showing the spiral out of control that will soon happen, that occurs a couple times throughout the movie. I think it all works really well, as a metaphor as you watch it. Of course, you're seeing the film's title, Requiem for a Dream. You know that it's not going to end well. So it's kind of in the title that things are not going to go well. It's not going to be a happy film at the end of the movie. But I still think that once you get boiled down to it, it is a really depressing movie. It really does make you think about how lives can be turned upside down simply because of drug use and addiction, and your focus on a dream that may not be a reality. And I do understand why people find this, especially the ending, to be a difficult movie to watch, because we've watched some movies in the difficult films like Hereditary, which is, when it boils down to it, not extremely realistic, and that's going to happen in real life. Obviously, certain parts of it could, but once you get down to the end of the movie, it's really about a demon. That's not really realistic to real life. Requiem for a Dream is, anybody can fall into drug use, and as we've seen, even this was a kind of a prescient movie, because in 2000, that was not during the time of the opioid crisis. And it kind of comments on that without knowing that that's to come. So this really is a very realistic portrayal of, what could happen with drug use. And I think that's what makes it all the more difficult. But would you characterize it as a difficult film? Because as we've seen so far, you have not really found the two that we found to be difficult films. What would you say?
From my personal experience, yes, this would be one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Just because of, like I said, knowing people who have gone through drug addiction, and having family members who have suffered drug addiction, and sometimes unknowingly going through these things, until recently, where it's like, oh, this is what's been going on. So yeah, this definitely is. I mean, I would still watch it again because I think it's that well of a made film, but I would definitely say the content of this film and the ideas and the overall story definitely relates more and is much more grounded into where, it would be. I would say it's difficult to watch.
Yeah, I think everybody will get a little bit of a different thing out of it too. Especially like men and women, we're going to see it differently. The prostitution element is going to be a little bit different for women than it is for men. The element of, almost like cuckolding is going to be different for certain people. So I think like
you're just gonna be happy to see Jennifer Connelly in Goth.
Yeah, right.
At the end.
I think it
Keith David's a big Goth fan.
Yeah. It just
really into Suicide Girls.
It has a lot of different elements to it that will make you depressed or, upset. I think like it can do it in a multitude of ways, and really depends on which storyline you kind of resonate with most. But
Tappy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I resonate with Tappy. I also gave up red meat. You know what? That's why Arnold is so miserable, but also I do like how they picked him as Arnold as well, and just to be like the most like off-putting person for her to to have to deal with. Especially like when she's in his room and he's like laying there, and you can only see like he's definitely naked, but you can only see the top half, and he's just looking so.
I like the fact that like when they're about to have sex, she goes, "Can you turn the lights off?" And he's like, "What?"
Yeah.
Like he totally oblivious. Like, what do you mean? I want to see you fucking me. Fucking me. For God's sakes.
Yeah.
All right. You're gonna insist the lights are off. Fine. Whatever.
Yeah. He's just a unappealing specimen.
Which, I mean, again, him, if it is true, again, like, I don't remember seeing any, I paid attention while watching this film. If he really is her psychiatrist, it is, like, that's disturbing, obviously. And the fact that they've had, like, a relationship for however long. But, I mean, we don't, even still, like, even if they're not, like, they don't really ever hint at what his relationship is to her. Originally, I thought that was her dad or some shit. Because they briefly bring up how she's like estranged, from her family. So.
Yeah, all around a disturbing element to the movie. All right, so we have to rate Requiem for a Dream. What would you give it on a scale of 10 two-headed dildos?
Wow, you read my mind. I'll probably give it an 8.5. Could be a 9, but right now I'm feeling like it's on par with Funny Games. Maybe even a little better. I like this movie a lot. I think it's really well done. I think it's the concept is really well done as well. It's really, down, dirty, and gritty, and grounded, and it stays grounded the entire time. I think the acting throughout the film is really good. One of the few times where I'd say Jared Leto isn't a piece of shit, piece of shit wannabe Joaquin Phoenix. With it, his thespianness, but I think it's really well done. Jennifer Connelly is great too. Obviously, Christopher McDonald's fucking great as Tappy in those infomercial bits. I think as good and grounded as the idea is, I think a lot, and Marlon Wayans is really good as Tyrone too. I think a lot of the mileage you'll get out of this film is within its editing and cinematography. I think that has a lot of the appeal of it. It's such a well shot, well edited, well paced film. It's incredibly gritty, incredibly stuck to on principle of what it's trying to show. You can glean a lot from it depending on your life experiences. And I think, again, today, especially today, with the subtext of addiction, being 20 years out from this film, and people kind of seeing what the modern day opioid crisis has kind of given us. It definitely can leave, if you're somebody who's either suffered through it, that, or people who have, you can totally glean a lot from this film. And I think so far out of all the films we've done, it's probably the most quote-unquote difficult to watch, because it is, at least for me, more impactful than, say, Hereditary or Funny Games. But I think it's really good. I don't think it's Aronofsky's best film. Probably The Wrestler still is, but this is a very good film. Really good. And I think even if you're not like a film buff who likes, kind of artsy-fartsy films, you can kind of enjoy this because it's such a kind of well-paced, well-structured film with a really good eye.
Yeah, I would probably give this a 9 out of 10. I think it's a really good movie. I think Aronofsky does a really good job with the direction of it and the cinematography. It's a very strong movie symbolically, like throughout the entirety of the movie. That everything that it's showing is really metaphorical. I think that they do a really good job with all of the cuts and edits, because there is a lot, and a lot of times there's like split screen and things like that to kind of throw the viewer off. But even then, I think that those elements kind of play into the fact that at the outset of the movie, we're kind of meant to have like a false sense of security, and then it kind of spirals out of control after that. I think it does a really good job with showing how that spirals out of control, giving voice to the characters, and not just making them into like quote unquote drug addicts. It gives them different characters, different motivations, and that's really what we want. And then also showing how people can get into those situations. It's not just, the normal person who's a drug addict. Everybody can be a drug addict in some way. Addiction can strike anyone, and that's really what this film is showing, and how those things can affect people and make them lose control of their lives. I think it has a really good soundtrack. Soundtrack is very cathartic at times. Interestingly enough, I found some very similar details in the soundtrack between this one and Saw. Saw kind of has like the same kind of structure of the violin score, which I thought was interesting.
I'd like to play a game with you.
Yeah. Obviously, this came first, and but I found some similarities between those two soundtracks. But I think that the soundtrack is really good. Like I said, the sound design is really good, and overall, this is a very depressing movie. When it ended, I just kind of like sat there and thought for a little bit, about life and about things that can lead you down the wrong paths and obsessions and stuff. So I think that it really does.
You just wanted to go home and listen to some good, like you want to listen to Neil Young, The Needle and the Damage It's Done.
Yeah. I think it's a really effective movie. It really gets its point across. It is a difficult film, I think, and I'm really glad I saw it. Still holds up 22 years later. So, all right. So, next week we finish out our difficult films month.
We're doing Serbian film.
No.
Oh.
No, we're not doing a Serbian film. But the films that I picked, like I tried not to pick films that I thought were, like, I feel like a Serbian film is really a trollish film, and so that's why I didn't really pick it. There's room for it, like if we do a difficult films month part 2, and if people like point out difficult films that we should do, then we'll, by all means, we'll
have to do all of Lars von Trier. We'll have to do Nymphomaniac.
Yeah. Yeah, but the next one we're doing is Antichrist. And you know how we're doing Antichrist?
Willem Dafoe.
So we can see Willem Dafoe's penis. That's right. Willem de penis. That's why we're doing it.
Have you seen Antichrist?
No, I have not, actually. I've not seen it. So I'm excited because, again, like, this is another one that people talk about quite a bit that they say is effective, and I'm excited to see what that's about. So I picked a mix of ones that I knew people say are difficult, and then ones that I've seen that I found were difficult. And so now we're getting into the ones that I've not seen, but I am excited to see if I find them difficult or not. So it should be a good episode. All right, well, thanks for listening to our difficult films episode on Requiem for a Dream. We hope you enjoyed. We hope you relived the experience if you can't watch it again. So, thanks for listening to that. We hope to see you back. We're losing you over here. We hope you see you back for our next episode on Antichrist. And if you want to be reminded of when that comes out, you can subscribe to us. We're on pretty much every podcasting app you can think of. We're on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, home base at Anchor.fm, Good Pods, pretty much everything. You can subscribe to us on there, leave us a like and review. Really appreciate that. We are also on Facebook and Twitter. Just search for us on there, Blood and Black Rum Podcast. We have an email address at bloodandblackrumpodcast@gmail.com. You can write to us. Let us know what you like, what you don't like. Give us suggestions for Difficult Films Month Part 2. And then we also have a Patreon at patreon.com/Blood and Blood Podcast. You can donate to us. Everything that you donate to us, well, we'll say we'll put it towards new technology, but it's probably going to go towards beer. But anything you can give, we certainly appreciate. All right. Any parting words before we head out?
No, that's about it.
All right. That concludes our show. Thanks for listening. Hope you tune in next week for Antichrist. And until then,
take care.